So thank you for having me, and I'm really excited to be in such great company. I mean, as many of us know, the first 90 days, even the first 30 days of navigating any new role can be really challenging because that is pretty much the time frame you have to build really long-lasting relationships, build trust in your role, and even start setting yourself apart as someone to watch. So I'm excited about all the insights that we will all be getting on this call. So my first question I will throw to both of you. So Shay first, your paths into product management are quite different. So can you please walk us through how you got into product management and what your first few days actually felt like? You're muted.
Actually, it's just me.
Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, some people are complaining about audio and the network, so I don't know if that's something we want to agree on in terms of cameras off, but I always prefer to leave mine on, but let me know if we want to switch that. So yeah, my journey into product management was not linear at all. I think a lot of people, to be honest, who have been in the industry for over 10 years will probably say the same thing, because at the time we had few product managers, but it wasn't like a massive thing. So my background was in advertising and marketing. I knew exactly what I wanted to do, so it informed my choice of what to study. I wanted to work in an advertising agency. And that was clear to me. And in Nigeria at the time, you had to study mass communication, because I think there was only one university in the entire nation that was offering advertising as a course. So I knew I wanted to do mass communication and then major or do a master's in advertising. So it was very clear to me, and that was kind of how I started. Of course, did that, enjoyed it, did my NYSC, was posted to a public relations company. So everything was going well, you know. Then I moved to the UK to do my master's, again, all according to plan, advertising and design. And then I started the search for a job in advertising, and nobody prepared me for this. And I'm sure a lot of us can relate. A lot of, unfortunately, emails. I was in Leeds at the time, which I imagine, to be honest, in hindsight, why are you looking for an advertising role there is probably question one. I probably should have moved, but I didn't know all of these things. So I searched for a job for a long time. It just didn't work out. And I think at some point I lost the will. I was just like, you know, I'm just going to do whatever makes sense. And I always recount the story because I think it's really important. My manager at the time, and I always stress it because sometimes I think most of us here seem to be, you know, of African origin. So I'll say a lot of us often look for mentors in people who look like us. But I always say that help can come from different places. So I had a manager at the time. Her name is Geraldine, fully white British woman from Yorkshire. In one of our one-to-ones, you know, she pretty much just said to me, I think you've done everything that you need to do in this role. I don't see you going any far, like beyond, you know, where you are. And she was like, what else do you want to do? And that conversation sparked, you know, a whole exercise in me searching for other opportunities that kind of had the same skills that I thought I had at the time. So yeah, I basically did a lot of analysis of some jobs that I had seen. There were some PM roles, but I don't think it was called product management at the time, to be honest. And that enabled me to do a switch in my role with the same company. So I was with Barclays at the time. Yeah, got a job, moved to London. And yeah, that's how I pretty much ended up in being, you know, a product manager. Then I did all the certification courses and learned on the job, which is what I always recommend to everybody. And yeah, it's just been up since then. And my first few days, I think I would say it was just a lot of things, you know, the unspoken dynamics, which I'm sure we'll get to, deadlines, you know, nobody really prepping you for all of this work politics and, you know, the usual PM things. But yeah, that's what I have to say to that.
Thank you so much, Jay. You've pretty much had quite a journey. I can especially relate to the marketing and advertising background. Maybe later we explore if there's this linear jump from marketing into product management. So Chinonso, how about you?
Yeah, funny thing, Shay, in my past life, I lived in Leeds as well, so we have a point in common there. I lived in Leeds in Berkshire many years ago. My journeys are quite different. I have a degree in electrical engineering from University of Lagos. I've never worked as an engineer. Straight out of school, I got an offer to join a Nigerian agriculture company called Babangona as a business analyst. It was good money at the time, and for me, it was having a job straight out of university was very lucrative, even before NYC. Joined as business analyst, working on projects within the company, trying to scale some project we're working on. Did that for a year. At the time, I had a lot of friends that were software engineers, and I could see what the tech industry looked like at the time. This was way before AI, obviously, where it was my number one priority was I wanted to be able to get a job that I could sell myself globally. And the clearest path that looked like it was the clearest path for me then was tech. So within the company, I had done well enough to have enough currency to ask for a move. They had a very massive engineering division. And when I spoke to the MD, then he was like, "Why don't you try product? It's not engineering, but I think you have some business sense, and you don't want to be buried into just the implementation side of things." So I thought about it. After a few weeks, I came back and like, let's try this for a few months and see if it works out. And that's it. That's how I came to product. My first few days, I spent some time learning about product. So I did some courses online. There's lots of things you can find on LinkedIn. I think I did one on one of these Coursera or type courses about product. So spend time understanding like from first principles what exactly this product looks like, what's agile, what are all the things that we need to learn. And obviously first few years you realize there's theory and there's the real life practical implementation, and then we can get through that later on. But yeah, the first few years was basically, the first few weeks was basically trying to figure out how do I apply all of these things I've learned watching all these videos and the salespeople into like real day product development.
Thank you so much. So that gap between, theory and when you actually get on the job is so real. So I want to ask you, not just, so it's not just that you've gone across different companies. The companies that you've worked in, where you've had, multiple first 90 days, have been across different sectors, from agriculture to finance to, now e-commerce and technology giant. So as you've been moving across these roles, does your approach change each time, at least for your first 90 days, or do you have a playbook that you repeat at these companies?
There is no playbook. And I can talk through how they were all different. The first one, as I said, it was the same company, switching teams. I was lucky enough to work with a lot of the dev leads in my business analyst role. So they knew me already, they knew I knew my stuff. They just knew I was moving to a new role. And it gave me that understanding of he has to learn the job and then he has to make things work. My priority then was not even within the company. I knew that this was my path to get a global role. And straight off, I prioritized networking as a product manager. So I joined all the different global networking, product management, networking platforms I could find, all the ones locally. I was trying to learn as much as possible what product looks like outside of where I was at the time. I was not worried about where I was because I knew I was fine. I was going to learn a job anyway. I had enough currency within the company to not worry about my job itself, but I prioritized learning about what product looks like externally, and doing that was going to be like listening to other product managers, networking, learning from them, just so that I could get to a point where I could sell myself on a global scale. Second role was I moved to GS Goldman Sachs in 2022. I applied for the role from Nigeria. I've been a product manager for just over a year in my original job, and I felt like I was at the point where I had enough experience to apply for a global role. I did that from Nigeria. I got the job in Birmingham in the UK, and then it was a big move. I lived in the UK previously in my life, so it was not about the moving countries. It was about moving scenes, and the thing about tech is the same everywhere. Software is the same everywhere. Product is the same everywhere. The people are different, but it's still the same. We're going to build code and technology to make the business work better. It was a new field, finance. I have no finance training. So my priority then was, how do I learn enough in this space to become the SME? And we can speak about this later on, but one of my core principles of product manager is that I need to understand the problem more than anybody else. And if you're trying to understand the problem more than anybody else, then it means if it's a new field, you have to learn things from first principles. When you come into any problem space, there's always assumptions. We want to build this because of this, but as a product manager, your job is to understand why do we think that's the best thing to do in the first place. And so I prioritized learning about finance. I was working in loans in investment banking, learning about corporate loans. Unfortunately, this is a field that is not, you can't just go on Google and learn things. So you have to actually sit with people, sit with the front office team, do that daily job to understand how things work. And then in a few weeks, when you get into meetings, when people see that you know more than they do, but have been coming for 15 years, they give you that credit. And then that was my step into making sure that I had that credit to do my job later on. Amazon was very different. So here there was jeopardy because I had a probation period. It's the thing in Amazon, you get 6 month probation. If you don't pass, you leave. So there was that jeopardy, and I don't think I liked it because there's a 3 months midway probation cycle where they review your performance and stuff. But having that in the back of my mind means that you have to deliver something in that period. So I had a book that was given to me by my manager when I left GS. It's called First 90 Days. I think it's great. It's a generic book about the first 90 days of a job. I read that as well. It was logistics, first job with logistics. So I prioritized learning about space as well. But my main priority was, what is the one thing I can identify that I can do in this period that everyone will see that this guy is going to deliver later on? Because that's all they care about. Like how are we sure this person is going to deliver going forward? And that was my priority at the time, to be able to find out one thing or two things or three things that I can learn, deliver quickly, that can make me pass my probation, basically. And that was my priority. All different scenarios, different product, but yeah, it's about adapting to where you are and figuring out what's the one thing I can do to succeed at this time.
Okay. So just curious, would you say it has gotten easier for you to adapt, or would you say it's more of a thing where, unique set of challenges, adaptation is not necessarily easier? Yeah.
I would say everybody goes as a person every day. I assume everyone's trying to go as a person every day. So that means every scenario you get through, you try to learn from it. So in that sense, I would say I'm getting more experience at adapting to new scenarios. Is it getting easier? It depends because obviously the more you learn and the more you adapt, the higher you set the bar. And that's the case across your moves as well. All these moves I make are to slightly more senior roles, more salary, all of that stuff, and that comes in more responsibility. So for example, my role at GS, there was no expectations. Like I was a very junior role. I was coming as an analyst, as an analyst, and it was like nobody cared about if I delivered on the first day. Versus Amazon, where super high bar, and they're hiring you to get going immediately. So in that sense, if you want to climb, as you climb up in new roles, there is that increased expectation, but at the same time, you have the increased experience as well because you've done this previously in the past.
Okay. Thank you. Shay,
Okay.
in the first 90 days in a new role, there are usually a lot of things in front of you. You're coming into a new space, new company, new colleagues, new product, new problem. When you're faced with so much, how do you actually figure out?
Hello.
Yeah.
Yes,
I think
I
you
was
broke
saying.
up halfway through.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
No.
Okay, so I was saying, when you're faced with so much in your first 90 days, how do you actually cut through the noise and figure out what matters the most?
I think that's a really, really good question. I think the first thing to say, just picking up on what Chinonso said, is understanding, first of all, the context that you're in, and potentially I would say why you were hired in that role. So I think that's really important because I like context a lot, and I think it probably comes from this whole being a product person, because I can say stuff and say, okay, let's cut through the noise, but if you had a probationary period, right, that's your biggest focus, right? That's what you need to focus on. But I'm going to take the assumption and say, okay, let's imagine that we're in a scenario where everything's working as it should be. So we're in this dream product land where everything's, everything's working as it should be, the Marty Kagan perfect world. So you're just there to really, really do this outcome led, really, really focus. Everybody you're working with is super aligned. I think cutting through the noise, it's always about listening to those things that people are not saying. I think that when you come into an organization, you will always have been hired with a lot of promises. Nobody's going to hire you and say to you, when you come here, we work in a project style, right? Even though when you do end up in that place, that's what they do. So I think cutting through the noise is really about listening. Spending a lot of time, I know we're product people, spend a lot of time with the key people. So for me, those would be your users and your stakeholders, but really listening to the things that are being said. There will be things that are repeated over and over again. One of the things I love to do is when I get into a new role, I literally have a template on Miro that I use all the time, and I write down quotes that I'm hearing over and over again. People always laugh at me and they say, what are you doing? But like, I can tell you hand on heart what my boss says, and it gets to a point where I start to sound like him as well. And I think it's really important because people can fake the interview process, they can fake the recruitment, they can fake onboarding, but you will hear the same things, right? So someone has said, okay, we work in the product way, but actually all they're talking about is delivery. So that's saying to me, right, this is someone who cares about that. So how do I tweak what I'm doing to ensure that I give them what they need? Because if that person is a huge stakeholder, if I don't give them that, I'm just hitting like a wall. You might also have a stakeholder who probably has the keys to your users. There's all these really, really funny politics when you go into organizations. You think you should have access to things, but there's this other team that manages whatever. And that's the key thing that you need to access. So for me, cutting through the noise is really listening, making sure that you're as curious as you can be, and not just about the users, but also the business stakeholders as well. Because ultimately, I think those two things hand in hand for me just makes the perfect product person. So yeah.
Thank you, Shay. That was a really, really great, that was a great look into basically that entire journey for you. My question for Chinonso now is, earlier you spoke about, you were going into your different roles, you had to go back to first principles.
Sorry, I've lost Hazel again.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yes.
Okay. I think maybe no video would be better. Yeah, so earlier you spoke about, while you were going across several domains, you had to go back to first principles. You had to understand the problem extremely well, better than anyone else. Can you expand a bit on basically how you get up to speed with these unfamiliar products? And also, what would you recommend to new PMs who are also inheriting an unfamiliar product?
So when I was joining GS, one of my last interview actually, it was with a VP investment banker. She's been on the job for over 25 years, and she's like, I'm not a product manager, I'm not good at product. You seem to have passed all the product sessions. My problem is you're going to be working with me on a product that you've not done before. And the question was, how do you learn? And this is the one interview because I remember for my life, because I wasn't prepared for that. I was prepared for all the product questions and all the nice stuff. And I had to explain to her, and I think I have enough time for it here, how I take on board new information. I think for me the biggest thing is I enjoy learning new things. Like for me on a new job, the first few days when you're soaking in information, that's fun for me. So the learning part is easy. I'll give an example of the most recent one on Amazon. When I joined Amazon, I've never worked in logistics previously. I bought a book about logistics. I bought another book about logistics in the UK. And I bought another book about Amazon Freight itself, like the small piece of work I was going to own. So I had 3 books that I was reading on the train to work every day. That was supposed to give me the industry knowledge. So there is every business sits in their own space within an entire industry. And this same thing at GS, by the way. My first step was understanding what does the industry look like outside of what I do my day to day. It taught me about freight, taught me about logistics, taught me about all the different corners of how the UK works in that sense. The second piece is understanding the actual business you're seating and that space you're in. That one, it depends on where you are. At Amazon, there's a lot of writing, so it's about reading all the docs available, all the documentation, all the previous work that was done, all the decision making process that previously happened to get us to where we are today. Why does this work the way it does? Then the last piece is the most important one for me, speaking to the actual stakeholders and users. I've worked on mostly enterprise products in my entire career. So basically, the users of the product that I work on are internal in the business. So you can just walk up to your desk and ask him what's happening with this thing. And the first few weeks are when you still have the leverage to say, oh, I'm new, I have a lot of questions. Because after a few months, when you ask some questions, people look at you like, why did you know that already? So prioritize speaking to everybody that's a stakeholder, understanding what that space looks like, and then understanding every single thing they feel is the pain. And there's always problem statements when you join any company. They hire you because they feel like the problem you need to solve. And my favorite part of the job is questioning those problems. Getting to a point where I know enough about the problem to be like, are you sure that's the right solution for it? Or are you sure that's what we should be focusing on at this time? And it's learn the industry, understand the business space, understand the problem you're trying to solve, know your users. And when you combine all those things together, my favorite part of working in my job is I can say, this is what I want to do because this is where we are today. This is what our users think, and this is what the industry looks like, and this is how my solution will change all these things together. And that for me, learning those different pieces gets you to a point where you can make those statements and be believed.
Thank you. So you had spoken about, being able to go speak to people, ask stakeholders questions. At least you have like a window where it's still expected that you're doing that. And off of that, my question to you is, as a PM, who are the first people that you should intentionally build relationships with in that role? And in your case, how did those early relationships shape your effectiveness?
Okay, very good question. To be honest, I feel like we're going to say the same things on this call because it's honestly, we've already touched on it, but I like to think of three groups when I start into a role. So again, I think Chinonso has hit the nail on the head of, if you're new to that industry, all my career, actually, I've also hopped around different industries, which it wasn't by design, but I think I actually enjoy. So who knows where my next, industry is going to be. At the moment, I'm in retail, first time ever working in retail, which is a completely different, thing to telecoms and banking and my own business that I work in. But again, that curiosity, that whole thing excites me. But for me, apart from that, I think three groups of people that you absolutely should be thinking about. The first one has to be your users. So definitely, if you are lucky to work in an organization where you can just walk up to users immediately, that would be your first stakeholder group to focus on. However, I've worked in big organizations, and a lot of times there's a lot of gatekeeping on who can actually access the users. Good reasons, sometimes bad reasons, sometimes political reasons, God knows whatever. But in my organization, if you work on, like in Tesco as an example, right? If you want to reach customers, there's already all these forums that exist. There are UX, there's so many teams that gatekeep, how you access it. So sometimes it's you accessing those users directly, but sometimes it's you going through people to access the user. So understanding who is going to give you that access is the big thing, whether that's, you being best friends with the head of UX or head of research or whatever it is, find that person and just make them your best friend, however you want to do it. The second thing is similar to your users, who controls or influences access to data is another thing. Again, in an ideal world, you would log in and on day one, you have all these dashboards that exist. Ideally, this is what you would expect, but I've come into roles before where there is no measurement whatsoever. Again, similar to Chinonso, I've managed internal products, and a lot of times these internal products can get very project driven, where everybody is just churning out, features, and you have to almost take a step back and go, okay, actually, why are we doing what we're doing? what is our measurement of success? What does success look like? As an example, one of the data products that we're looking at the moment, we've been able to redirect the focus to accuracy as a measure, because that's actually the key differentiating factor that's going to, increase adoption. So who influences your access to that data? Who can give you access? Sometimes all you need is just, a systemized thing, but other times you need to actually, talk to analysts within the business, again, for them to give you all of these things. Sometimes you need to build the dashboards from scratch, but that would be my second group. And then my third group is who has decision-making power. In every organization, this can vary. Sometimes it's your manager. Sometimes it's your manager's manager. Sometimes it's someone who's worked in the company for 30 years. These really silent people that hold a lot of power. Try and identify those people, and you will find them. If you listen enough, you will realize that people are repeating the same thing somebody said. They're saying, oh, this person recommended this thing, and so we're going with that. Find the people that are shaping where the business is going. And those are the people that you need to then make your case with, because as a product person, a lot of times, like Chinonso said, you're going to be challenging a lot of things. You'll be asking questions on why are we doing this in the first place? You'll be asking, should we do this first before the other thing? You really want to make sure, and this is my hack, by the way, I never walk into a room where decisions are being made without talking to the key decision makers first. I always rally around them before. So when I'm in the room, in fact, my boss is always like, how do you know this person? And I'm like, I don't know. So give yourself the best form of success. Don't walk into a fire without, the tools that you need to put out that fire. So to me, just to repeat again, the three main groups for me would be users or whoever can help you access them, data, whoever can give you access, or whoever controls that access, and then whoever has decision-making power. I think those three groups of people will help you scale really, really quickly within your first 90 days.
Thank you so much, Shay. So as a follow-up, I want to look at the other side of the coin. Now, with you, having over a decade of, leading products at...
I think I've lost you again.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you've most likely seen a lot of PM of trying to earn trust within the company, going across different stakeholders, those who have the decision-making power, those who hold the data, basically all the examples that you listed. In your experience, what would you say separates those ones who earn trust quickly from those who struggle?
Okay, good question. I think I got the question. But yeah, I think Chinonso, again, I wrote it down when you said it, but I think you hit the nail on the head. So for me, the biggest thing is curiosity, which I mentioned earlier. So again, when you come into a place, regardless of how familiar you think you are with a place, there's always a context. There's a context of that business. There's a context of the industry. There's a context of just the people that move things around. So curiosity, I think, is a super obvious one. But I think the biggest thing, again, what you said was that business awareness. Marty Kagan calls this, product sense, essentially. So do you understand, not just, for example, I always say to my research team, we'll come up and build this amazing user flow, but do you understand how that makes the business money? Do you understand how to merge those two things together? For me, it's not either or, it's both. So for me, the PMs that always make the most impact for me are the people who come in with a genuine curiosity around those two things, but also they are fluid. So I can put you in a room with an engineer and you'd have a very solid conversation. But if I were to put you in a room with a finance person, you would have a solid conversation as well. If my boss or somebody else was in the room, I know that you'd be making very valid points that are not too skewed towards one or the other. I feel like as a product person, you're always meant to be in between. That's almost your superpower. You're never really supposed to lean too much to either of these sides. So to me, I think combining that product sense, or business awareness with genuine curiosity about what the users care about, what their pain points, what they really, really value, is ultimately, I think, what's going to make you stand out. And for me as well, just to put the lens, I'm currently a manager of PMs, so I don't do as much product work, as I used to do. However, I think every manager is always looking for somebody who can replace them, except that person doesn't want to leave that role. that's what is going on. We're having sessions about what's your, who is the person that's going to fill in for you when you're not here, because that's our measurement of success, essentially. So when I'm looking at PMs, I'm looking at who is the person that's not acting as a PM at the moment. They're almost going above and beyond. So they're not just focused only on their own siloed product. They're thinking around, like you said, so Fright, but in the grand scheme of Amazon's goals and our goals for the year, in the grand scheme of our annual reports, how does that actually play in the wider scale? And those are really, really the kind of people that I think will last in the industry. Those are the kind of people that are fluid. They can go from, if there's an opportunity in another area, I will feel comfortable pulling you there, because I know that you're not going to crash and burn. You probably don't even need extra time to scale up, because you're just all in that size. So that's the other lens for me as well.
Okay, thank you so much. My next question is for Chinonso. So earlier, please confirm, can you hear me?
Very clearly, yes.
Okay. So earlier you had talked about the book, The First 90 Days, in which the author pretty much talks about, getting that first win or that first impactful thing that pretty much sets you apart. So throwing that to you, what did your first win look like as a PM, and how did you even identify that opportunity while you were still a new PM?
My first win in my first job, I don't remember, honestly. It's been such a long time, and as I said, my priority was how do I get a better job as a PM. But to be frank, I think the first win I had in those first few days, and I'll call this a win because that's when I felt like this is something I want to do, is when for the first time I put something in front of one of the users of the product I was working on. It was not a prototype because it took much longer there to get even a working Figma mock-up to show to my users. So the process was you speak to these people, understand the business problem, and then put together like a flow diagram of what you think the present is going to look like when the app is built. And I had done a lot of sessions. I flew to Kaduna at the end to see the operations in motion, and I came back and with all the things I've learned, I put together this flow diagram of what I thought the product was going to look like when it was launched. And I put this in front of one of the business coaches at the time leading the operations, and look on his eyes, I will never forget this. He was wild. He was like, I didn't even think this was possible. I knew how to explain the problem and what the business needs to do, but this will solve our problems. And that's feeling when you propose something that goes beyond what the people that complain about the problem think about. That's something I keep looking for in my career, and I think that's why I'll be stuck on this job for a long time, because that feeling of solving our show problems that the users are amazed about it. The business is like, this is going to be amazing for us as well because it solves the business problem as well. Business makes money from it. Everyone's happy. I think that for me that was the first win, and again it just came. It was an output of trying to understand the problem better than anybody else, and then you've learned about like user pain points, like understanding what is the actual root pain point. Yeah, they're saying that it takes me time to do this thing, but what is the actual pain point beneath all of this? And then finding that and then proposing the solution because you understand what's possible within the business space. It's on how the architecture was like, why don't we do this and connect this to this instead? And then that's also a problem. And then I think that for me, I would always remember it because it was the first time I could see what solving the problem looks like for the user itself.
Thank you so much. So as a follow-up, while you were trying to get this win, and maybe even in a different role, while you were trying to basically establish yourself or carve out that niche for yourself in the first 90 days, did you experience moments of self-doubt or imposter syndrome, especially when you're surrounded by more experienced colleagues? And if you did, how did you handle this?
Okay, this is one area where I'm probably different from most people. I've never questioned myself. So from a very young age, I have been in situations where I've done things that people are like, how did he do that? How did he get this through? It doesn't happen every day, but I think I make it a point of action to keep those ingrained in my head so that I always feel I'm able to do everything at any time. Like that's one thing I think it's my strength. I know some people struggle with like self-confidence, imposter syndrome. It's never been the case. I think the only time I've had some sort of a challenge was when I moved, and it was a cultural thing where I went from everyone around me looks like me to everyone around me is different. And I think again, that's a cultural switch. I think with everybody it takes time to adapt. But in terms of my work itself, I make it a point, and this is different for most people. I'm not a shrink, so I don't know what exactly is everyone's problem here or what their background is. But I think reminding yourself of those things you've done that have made you feel confident is probably the best way to go. And for me, it's not very far in my head. I just have to think a bit more. Oh, I did this thing on Monday. That was great. And then if I meet people that don't seem to think what I do is great, I'm very good at separating myself from the work. Not everything I've worked on, that I've launched is amazing or perfect. I can do something that is seen as not great, but I don't attach it to myself. Like, okay, last week I did something, it didn't meet your expectations. Understand that. I'm going to make that better, but I'm still a great person, great at what I do. But that one thing I did at this time did not meet expectations, and that will get worked on and improved. Again, I think for everyone it's different. I know there's lots of self-help material out there. Find what works for you to make you remind yourself of how great you are, because we're all great in different ways, and keep that at front of your mind so that no matter what you come across, and trust me, especially in spaces like Amazon, where this is everywhere you look, there's very high caliber people that believe themselves, and it's very easy to get buried in stuff. So you have to find out one thing that makes you feel like you're here for a reason. And I keep what I joke around me is I got hired. Like, you chose me out of all the other candidates. There's a reason for it. So if there was nothing, I would not be here in the first place. Find what works for you, keep it in front of your mind. And one thing I've learned in terms of the business itself, there's nowhere that everyone knows what's happening. They hired you because there's a problem. If everything was perfect and everything was working fine, you wouldn't have a job. So keep it in the back of your mind that things were not working fine in the first place. That's why they thought they need me. So everywhere I've gone to, there's no perfect place to work. There's no perfect place where everyone knows everything and everything's working fine. And if you keep that in your mind and not just keeping your emotions or confidence up, knowing that there's no one else that is perfect as well, is also another step as well.
You know, so the rock stuff. I want to be like you when I grow up.
Yeah. Can I add to that? I think that's yeah.
By the way, there's a very thin line. Sorry, one more thing. There's a very thin line between being self-confident and being arrogant.
Mm.
For me, arrogance comes when you begin to say those things to everybody around you. It's all in my head. So I know all those things. I keep it in my head. But when it turns to arrogance is when you now voice out, oh, I think I'm amazing, I think I'm great. Let the work speak for you. But in terms of what's happening in your head, because even the feeling like you're not up to it, it's in your head. It's in your head as well. No one's telling you this directly. You're making things up in your head based on what's happening. So keep it in your head, and then make the work be the thing that speaks for you in the public spaces.
Great. I love that build, because I think there's a cultural thing as well. But I agree. I also think that there are times that you need to say how great you are. But, I think what I was going to add, because I think this is such an important point, because a lot of us find ourselves sometimes in rooms where we don't feel, for whatever reason, we don't feel worthy to be there. I love the point you said about find your way. So something that I always do myself, and I also tell my team to do, we call it an accomplishment log. Some people call it brag sheet, whatever it is you call it. Don't ever wait for the moment where you need to gas yourself up to find the evidence. So as I walk through my day, I'm trying to figure out what feedback am I getting from people. The casual person who said, you know what, the point you made there was really fantastic. I write it down. I literally have a spreadsheet. The other time somebody said, oh, Shay, this thing you did, I'll write it. I don't know when I'm going to need it, but if you check my notes app on my phone, I have a version of it. If you check my laptop, I have a version. My work laptop, I have another version. So whenever this feeling creeps in, I just open that and I just read it. And then I start to tell myself, yes, I'm not perfect. However, this is what this said. So I think for those who maybe that doesn't come as natural to, find a way. I always call it using facts to numb the noise. So find ways to get feedback. Some people are so scared of asking for feedback because you think people will always tell you bad feedback. 9 times out of 10, when I ask for feedback, the things I hear are things that I didn't even realize I had. And not in a bad way, by the way, like amazing, amazing things. So all those things I'm overthinking and thinking, oh, maybe my calm exterior is not great. That's what people love. People are like, you can cut through the noise. You're not emotional about it. You do this. So it helps me reframe what I may be thinking is a weakness to a strength. So just wanted to add that in there as a tip.
Thank you so much, Shay. I really love the brag sheet because I do that as well. If you don't keep tabs on your achievements and the things that you're doing really well, nobody's going to help you do that. You have to do it by yourself. So my question for you, Shay, is, coming from a marketing and advertising background, how would you say you were able to turn that background into a strength rather than something you had to overcome?
I love this question. And I think the number of times people ask me, how did you make the switch to product management? This is literally what I did. So remember what in the intro, I talked about how I had this one-to-one with my manager at the time. And all she said is, what are the skills that you think you have now? And how can we find a job that needs the skills? That's how I literally ended up in product management. And I'll list some of them. Advertising, one of the things we had to do in advertising is sketch out ideas. So I still have my book. We call it a book. It's a huge A4 book where you sketch out stuff. I used to sketch out ideas for, storyboards and swatch adverts, just random. I'll just sit down and say, oh, if we had to sell this pair of glasses, what would the script look like? What would the flyer look like? So I used to sketch all these things. Again, when you think of being a PM, Figma designs, you talked about it. Wireframes, it's the same thing. Very, very similar. All you're doing is just, in one case, you're probably drawing boxes, and the other one is probably a bit, fleshed out art. The other one in customer services, I used to work, I took calls, a lot of us are doing jobs now. Sometimes we knock those jobs down, but you're learning a lot of skills. There was a time where I used to work for Nationwide Building Society, and I used to take calls. And I remember that one of the things they would say is, we're doing something called sales through service. So we would have targets, but we weren't the sales team. But what they expected us to do was talk about, serve. So somebody will call and say, okay, here's my credit card, blah, 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 blah. And then I would look at the information on the credit card and then spot when is the best time to pitch a loan. Because actually, a loan might be a better way to condense all the debts that you've built on your credit card. So we had targets, and I hated it at that time because I used to say, I'm not a salesperson. If I wanted sales, I'd have applied for a sales role. But it completely transformed the way that I view sales. Sales is helping somebody reach a goal that they probably just don't realize a path to get to. So that person who, I'm talking to may have never thought about a loan. And yes, there's a target, there's a business target or whatever, but in reality, you're probably on a credit card that's charging you 20%, and the loan is going to reduce that to 4%. So if one of your goals is to reduce your debt, guess what? Why not get a loan? So those are skills that I picked up from doing all these other jobs. And they're absolutely valid in being a product manager. Storytelling, again, kind of cuts through all of those things, both in advertising and also my business, having context of the wedding industry, the event industry, doing some research to understand what are people looking for. Our vendor directory right now, our USP is responsiveness, because we found that there are so many vendor directories out there. Like, if there's no scarcity of finding vendors, the problem is finding the ones that will respond to you or the ones that will do X, So finding all those USPs and iterating and all of those type of things, I picked from the non-product, world. So there's always something that you're doing in your world that I think is transferable, whether it's 20%, to PM, or whether it's 50% or 90%, you need to figure that out. And then maybe do a course to help you, fill that gap. And I think how you pitch these things as well is really important. People come to me sometimes and say, oh, I've never been a PM before, I've never worked. Don't say that. Like, just say, you know what, I work currently as this, but actually my skills in da 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 are really transferable. So the way I always say to people in my team, the way you come to me is the way that I'll receive you. So if you come to me with a very deflated, again, back to Chinonso's perfect example, if you come very deflated and go, I don't really know, I don't have skin in the game. I'm not your sister or your brother. So I'm going to take what you give me. I'll say, okay, this person is unexperienced. But if you come to me and you say, even though my job title is not being a PM, I wouldn't even lead with that, by the way, but even though I don't have a job title that says PM, here's what I've delivered. I did customer research, and through that we're able to learn blah, 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 blah. And on the back of it, we delivered this. Straight away, that's a PM right there. So really, really be aware of the skills that you have. Think of how to package it. And I'm not saying lie, because there are people, fake it till you make it is great, but there are things that you should do or not do. But I think just reframe how you position yourself. So for me, I think that's exactly how I ended up in this role. And yeah, I think anybody else can do that too.
Thank you so much, Shay. That makes so much sense. So typically I like to say that great product thinking is basically like you need so many skills. And I like to say that before I landed in product management, I collected skills like Thanos was collecting Infinity Stones. I like to view it that way. Yeah. So Chinon, so my final question for you. So for someone in this audience who is maybe starting their first PM role on Monday, what are 3 things, so maybe 2 to 3 things that they should prioritize in the first week? So not just the first 90 days, but week 1.
First thing, good luck, because you need it. For me, no matter what job it is you are starting, the first thing you should do is clarify expectations, and that's with your manager, wherever you're reporting to. First question on the first day is, what does success look like for me in 1 month, 3 months? That way there's a clear bar, and you don't want to do all the work you're doing and they come out at the other side of it and they're like, why are you spending time on that instead of this? So set clear expectations. What does success look like for me with this role in 1 week, 1 month? And I do that so I can exceed that bar and be like, well, you expected this and I delivered way more than this. Second thing is, as a product manager, meet all your stakeholders. Like, you don't know who they are, so obviously you need someone to point you to who those people are. Meet people, one-to-ones, 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, intros. That way people start sending you things that relate to what you're doing. I think one of the things you realize as a product manager, or I use as a product manager in my time, is you don't want to be asking people, why do you not include me in this conversation or this email or this call? Like, oh, I did not know you were here. I did not know that's what you're doing. So first thing prioritize is meet people, meet the stakeholders, quick intros, clarify what you're working on with them so that when things come up or things are happening, they can send that your way. Learn as much as you can. That's the third and key one for me. Learn your space, learn your business, learn your industry, learn your team, learn the problems, learn the users, get all the assets you need, as Shaya said, or if they're hidden behind walls, ask questions, because you will never get that first week back, in the sense that everyone knows you're new and knows that you don't know anything. So use that to your advantage. Spend that time you can asking questions and learn as much as you can so that you can build that platform to be able to start doing things in a few weeks' time. And once again, good luck.
Thank you, Chinon. So I especially liked the point about clarifying expectations, especially with your manager, because I mean, as a PM, it's better to just avoid a situation where you're like, but nobody told me. I did XYZ, expecting XYZ, but now I'm not getting the results I thought I would get. And it's like, okay, but did you discuss this? Was this the expectation? You could do great work that just does not align with what you're actually supposed to be doing. Thank you so much. Shay, my final question for you is, if you could go back and tell your day 1 PM self one thing, what would it be?
I'm not sure I have one thing, I won't lie, because yeah, can I cheat and say a couple? Because honestly, I was brand new to the industry, so I did not know many things, but I think curiosity, we've said, is such a good thing. Again, Chinos has said a lot there around curiosity around your users, the stakeholders, 1,000,000%. I think the biggest thing I'll probably say is study the people and the organization. I'm such a big believer now with my experience that you can come in with the best of intentions, and something as small as you using the wrong phrase, can block any goodwill that you're planning to land. So within every organization, there are like words that people maybe have ascribed some crazy meaning to that just does not make sense, but that because maybe some director said it, and because a director said it, everybody is like, this is gospel. And anybody who uses a phrase to say the same thing but not saying it in that way can literally be the barrier between you doing what you need to do and maybe getting answers to your question. So I really think, in addition to all the product stuff and knowing your industry and learning a lot, really, really take the time to study the people. Those one-to-one sessions, a lot of us sometimes are like, oh, I don't have time. Please go and spend time with people. Like you're never going to go far if you don't understand the people, especially if those people, you're a PM, for Christ's sake, like there's no way you can move forward if you don't talk to people. So if you're an introvert, I'm a big introvert. I don't talk. Left to me, I'll lock myself in my house. But people will unlock doors for you, right? So you really, really need to figure out how to find your own way to study people. Do things like read the annual report. If you're working for a big organization, there's always a report online that even customers have access to. Why are you not reading it? That will tell you so much in terms of where the business is trying to get to in the next 10 years. These are questions that you might be asking your boss, and your boss might not even know. But it's out there, right? There's AI as well. Do some research around the industry. Use Copilot, use Claude, use whatever you want to use. But really, really take the time to study people and the organization, because it's going to help you accelerate whatever you want to do. But it can also be a massive barrier.
Thank you so much, Shay. Just to add to that, please learn what both your boss and your boss's boss think excellence looks like.
Hey.
Oh, yeah, just so that you're playing the field in a good way on both ends. All right, so we will be opening up for questions now. On Monday, before we take your question, there's a question from Tina in the chat that says, this is for Shay. For someone entering a new role, what is the best way for aspiring PMs to communicate well? And how can one develop the confidence to speak clearly and concisely?
That's a very loaded question. I think what I would say is, when you say communicate well, again, there are two things there. So it could be that, do you feel that maybe you as a person, you need to improve your communication skills? If that's the case, then definitely there's a lot of help out there in terms of, how you do that. Things like, speaking in a concise way. There's a guy that I follow, I always forget his name. I think his name it starts with a V, but he talks about how you can regulate your speech, tone, all of those type of things. Like, they are really, really important, So I think there's one hand of, is it about you? And then the second one is are you communicating in the way that the person you want to talk to is going to hear you? And this all comes back to when we talk about spend time with your stakeholders. That's the reason why. If your boss or the person you're trying to influence is going to always, there's already a blocker, because this person maybe has this very crazy target and they want to impress their boss's boss, right? Your boss's boss. You really, really need to figure out, how do I speak in the language that this person is going to hear me? And you can't do that if you don't spend time with them. There's no rocket science, because half the job with communication is speaking the language that other person understands. So I think that would be my first thing. Just assess whether it's you or if it's the other person. How do you develop the confidence to speak clearly and concisely? Practice. Practice makes perfect. I'm a huge fan of saying to people, throw yourself in the deep end. And you don't have to start, big. So if I know that I struggle with speaking, what would I do? In my office, the moment they say we're looking for a volunteer to speak at, I don't even overthink it. I just put my hand up. And then I worry later of how I deal with it. Because if you continue to say I'm not ready, you will never, ever be ready. And one thing you'll need as a PM is this ability to speak concisely, right? So start to put yourself in situations where there's a time limit. There's 5 minutes to talk about something. practice. I'm always doing another PowerPoint slide every time. I'm condensing my narrative into 2 seconds. I'm thinking, and I go and practice. I say to people, if I say this to you, does this make sense? And take that feedback on board and practice and iterate. You're a PM after all, right? So that's what we do. So just practice and practice and practice, and it will work. The more you do it, the better you become.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shay. So Monday had his hand up, but I don't think he's on the call anymore. I'm not sure. So we'll take a question from Oluchi. She says, thank you, Shay and Chinonso. I'm starting my first PM role in a new industry on Monday. Congratulations, by the way. I'm keen to get your thoughts on one-on-one intros. How do you have any practical tips on how to structure the agenda and flow of the conversation?
Chinonso, do you want to take this one?
Oh, yeah, sure. I think don't forget that people are human beings. So as much as you want everything to be structured, for me, the point of one-to-ones is there's always like initial one-to-ones. There's 2 things. I always do an intro, like everyone, like, because I like to understand people's backgrounds and where they're coming from. It gives you context into how you can get them to speak to them in the way they understand. So, for example, if someone that was an ex-engineer that transitioned into products, different from someone that, like myself, is no one never transitioned before. I've worked in different fields. Some people were previous bankers and transitioned into product in banking, so they have experience as a banker as well. So, the first thing is intros. Understand their backgrounds. You're on the one-on-one for a reason, so they're a stakeholder or someone useful to you. And then the next thing I try to understand is what's the biggest problem to them at that time. So introductions, laugh and smile about stuff. I try to make a joke about something, find something in common that they can relate to outside of work. Don't force it if it's not natural. But the next big thing for me is understanding what's the biggest pain at that time. If it's a stakeholder, for example, that is a stakeholder for one of the products I've been asked to work on, it's like, what do you think about this problem? What is the biggest issue for you in this thing? And how's it been so far? Like, give them a platform to speak. Human beings like to talk about things, especially if it's a problem. Love to complain. So give them that space to be like, oh, let's find someone that's here to listen to me eventually. And as I said, people are human beings. Things are unnatural. You might book a one-to-one with someone that is 9 a.m. They're not a morning person. You get into the call and they're just like, why am I in this call this morning? And you can read the room and be like, okay, maybe this is not the best time. Schedule this one time for them later on. You can be in conversation and then it goes a completely different way, but it's still useful as well. So as human beings, we know my stakeholder relationships. And this is one of the things that was different from the theory. It's like understand who the person is and how to meet them where they are. And I think when you get in those conversations, you can steer it the way you think would make it a useful one for you. So no structure, learn about them, learn about the problem they're working on and why they're important to you as well.
Thank you so much, Chinonso. So Shay, there's a follow-up to the communication question you answered. Both Rosalind and Victor would like to know how it applies in a remote setting.
For me, it doesn't change anything. The only difference is obviously remote, you'll be doing it virtually. So there probably are a lot of extra things you now need to, like I work in a team where our engineering team, for example, could be anywhere, right? We have Central Europe, we have some countries in Central Europe, so different time zones. We have India, Bengaluru, so I think remote, what you just need to bear in mind is time zones, but it changes nothing. I think that it's even easier because now you can just book the time in, but everything Chinonso said, there should be no excuse not to do those things, especially in your first 90 days, because guess what? Especially if you work in a company that's huge, most of us are probably going to work for brands that have existed for the next 10, 20 years. Your calendar is going to max out. One of the things I do whenever I start a new role, I have a philosophy of my calendar. If I'm doing 9 to 5, 9 to 10 and 4 to 5 is focus time. I want to do things that I want to do, not things that I have to do. Of course, there's flexibility there. So if there's need for me to jump on a call, that's fine. But, you know, if I didn't do that at the beginning of my current role, I would literally have no time to do certain things. So there is no better time than to do this. So don't let the whole remote thing make you not do those things. It's exactly the same format, but it's even easier because you're actually, you know, you're able to do this across borders. So why not?
All right, thank you. So the next question I would throw to Chinonso first. The question is, how would you advise someone to transition into product in 2026 and attract international opportunities? For context, the person currently works in Big Four Consulting as a product designer.
Okay, I think there's a lot to unpack here. There's one piece which is transferring to product, and there's another piece which is attracting international companies. I assume that means applying and getting a role in an international company, and I assume that means you're currently working in Nigeria, I guess. One thing I'll say is the easiest way to transition to product is to move within the economy you are. That's my story. I think that's Shay's story as well. That's the story of a lot of people I know. I cannot advise you on what's happening today. I know my story. I know the story of most people are in the product space with me currently. And it's just moving in your teams. Like your product designer, which is not very far away. Like it was a different fit entirely. You're already in the process. You probably work with product managers as well. The thing about big companies is there's always openings. In my own case, there was no opening, and they made one for me because they didn't want me to leave. It was either I left or they gave me what I wanted to do. So I think try and see if there's a way you can advocate for yourself to move within your current team or organization. For any request you want to make in that sense, there's always a two-way thing. I like to see things from a perspective of what's their incentive, and what their incentive would be is how am I sure this person will perform as a product manager? Why wait for the role? Why wait? Start doing things the product manager does. Like just like pick it up. Like okay, what's the step from product manager to product design? There is a spectrum of product delivery or like product delivery, starting with like user research, ending with the actual launch of the product. Product design can start from the beginning and end at like execution. Product management stuff from the beginning anyway. So you're already doing part of a product manager work. All the user research you're doing, all the trying to figure out what is the best way to put this thing together to make a user use it like as I want to. My role at GS, for example, my product designer was in my user research code for me from day one, because I didn't want to go to him to explain what I thought was the ideal solution for what a wireframe should look like. I said, I want you to give me this call so you can hear exactly what they're saying. Afterwards, you can debrief and I can tell you what I think based on business context. But you're already doing basically what I'm saying is some sort of product job. Add that extra step to it. Try and figure out if there's room for you to move internally. Get those skills. There's loads of content online to like research and look at. You are here, which is a good step. You're trying to learn as much as you can from people doing the job as well. Great step as well. Network. I think try and move internally. You can't move internally. Again, something Shay said earlier is you can apply to a product role, and then using that experience you have by hopefully being able to do some things that are product related in your current job, you can also like have that as a template and say, okay, I've done this in the past. This is what I've done. I think it's product as well, and this is why I think I'll be a good product manager for you. I've seen product designers move across companies into product roles because they're able to show that they've done things that are called to product management in their current roles as a product designer. Hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Chinonso. Shay, do you have anything to add to that?
There's so much I want to say. I don't know how long we have, but again, Chinonso has said a lot, and I fully agree. 100% endorse the internal movement. It's just fewer barriers to cross. If you can do it, great. I'm not saying you have to stay there, but if you make that move, update your CV. Next 2 years, 6 months, whatever, you can find your way. That's fine. I think one thing I want to say, particularly to you as a designer, is this is something, it's not, I don't think it applies to every single person who's a designer, but it's something that I think is important. She also said it already. But what I find is a lot of designers, because, you know, we've been told the designer is supposed to check for usability, you almost just stay in that zone and you're just like, usability, 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 great, love it. But at the end of the day, I always remind you, if the business is not making money, your role will not exist. So I think one thing that would be good for you to do, and I'm not suggesting that you're in that bucket of designers, is start to ask yourself commercial questions, right? So as you're designing prototypes, ask yourself things around agility. How long are you spending coming up with prototypes? How involved are you in the conversations? Are you one of those people who's like, if you don't fill out a form, I'm not going to give you a researcher? Well, guess what? Life doesn't work that way. So are you the kind of person who, when Chinonso goes, we need to go to the users to actually understand, you know, whatever is going on? Do you go in there on day one, or are you waiting to be allocated to a project or a problem? So I think there's a mindset shift that might need to happen. Again, I'm not suggesting that that's where you stay, but start to do those product things. And really, I think with a lot of designers, the moment you just overlay your amazing usability with commercial business questions, I think you're up to something amazing. AI, again, is overflogged, but it's like, I know that in the next 5 years, builders are the ones who are going to get the roles. So again, you're already one step in, or 2 steps in, maybe even 3. Build a product. Like, honestly, I don't know, if you don't even need to pay to the upgraded version of Claude. There's Lovable, there's all of these things, but actually set yourself a target and build a product. The product could be actually to help product designers transition to being product managers, because when you build that and you're in an interview, that's going to be the most exciting thing to talk about. So I would challenge you to just set yourself up for something, give yourself a target, start doing those product things, whether in your role or outside your role. And I think the sky is your limit. The last thing I want to say about these global opportunities, again, you work in a Big Four. And the reason why this is important is some of us, okay, they will invite us to this all hands. You say, oh, I don't have time, I'm not going. Okay, continue. That's all I'm going to say. Just continue. Because people are there making connections, meeting people, asking questions that are putting their names on the map. But you're like, I'm so busy. The CEO is talking and you're like, I don't have time. Please, let's change. I don't care what you're looking for, what you're working on. There's a tech all hands. Please go. Please prioritize it, because you will hear some things that might even give you insights that might suggest that your team might be made redundant very quickly if you don't switch. So I think those opportunities are just, again, as a product person, you're receiving feedback, you're hearing, if my CEO is talking constantly about this problem, that's what the business cares about. Guess what? I need to align myself to that world. So don't skip those opportunities. If you're already in the Big Four, think of those global events that happen. How can you get involved? How can you be on the planning committee? How can you be the person that on that day, all your job is just to be responding to questions in the chat? It will open doors. So think about yourself in that way, and I think you'll make it.
Thank you so much. And just to add to that, I also transferred within my company. And I think something that really helped, or maybe 2 things that really helped, is 1, registering the intent very early with whoever that chief decision maker is. You're trying to transfer. Whoever makes the decision on that needs to know about it on time. Also, another thing is that engagement and visibility are currency in the company where you find yourself. So following up on what Sheyi said, ensure that you are always able to speak, ask questions, engage especially in public settings where people can actually see you doing that work. Ask the questions that the product managers did not even bother to ask. Show that you are thinking about product problems holistically. Even if you're coming from a design lens, still try and bake in that product management thinking into whatever questions you're asking and whatever feedback you're giving. So we have a question from Maureen, who's trying to ask, for someone fresh in the PM world, maybe you just finished learning and taking courses, how do you position yourself to land a role? What should she basically put in place to be considered for a job, since she's new in that job space? So I will throw this to Shay.
Okay. Yeah, when you say fresh in the PM world, so are they already working as a product manager? I'm trying to
I
read the
don't think
question.
she just finished learning. Yeah, so she just learned and
Okay.
took some courses. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I think I have to say, I think the job market now, there are roles, but it's so competitive. Like I don't think I've seen the level that it's at now. And this is why I think everybody's saying if you can move internally, great. Because the reality is with all the layoffs, there's more talent than there are roles. So for me, I would say some of the best things you can do is, again, being a PM before you even get that job. So what do I mean? Again, you can come up with a product that you're building. Start to ask yourself those questions that a PM in your shoes would have asked. I always say that a PM who has live on the job experience is always more hireable than someone who just has theory. So it depends. Again, when you say learning, taking courses, I think that's really great. But like we've said over and over again on this call, theory versus reality is always very different. So a lot of people are trying to reduce the time it takes from the hiring date to you actually getting, something done. So how can you do that? You can show me that actually you've been in that situation and you've been able to navigate that. There are so many opportunities. You don't have to wait for a paid job, even though it's not my preferred option. But if you're trying to get roles and it's not working, where can you volunteer? Find a lot of us are in so many organizations where somebody with product thinking will transform 1,000,000% of what is going on, whether that's a church, excuse me, whether that's a church if you're religious, or whether that's PM help, for example. There is always an outcome that the founder cares about, and they just need somebody to help them rejig and reprioritize and everything. Where can you volunteer? A lot of us overlook our alumni associations. I'm a big advocate. Do not ever let go of your alumni association. These people are rooting for you more than anybody else in the world. Just because you were in their class and you were their classmate or your coursemate, they will probably bank on you. So how can you volunteer there? Are you showing up in the community? They probably already have a community of job seekers. How are you leveraging that? Because maybe in that opportunity, maybe in that group, there is somebody who actually is willing to take a chance on you that somebody outside wouldn't. So I think really leverage upskilling yourself, first of all, to make sure that you stay competitive, because the roles that are open now are very, very competitive. So you want to make sure that you're covering that base. Second, look inward. What do you have already? Everybody has community. I don't care where you're based. There's a community somewhere. There's so many communities, especially in these days of being online. And be intentional. Don't just be somebody who is a number in a WhatsApp group. How are you using that community to help you get the outcome that you want, which is, getting a job? So yeah, all the best. And I hope that works out for you as well.
Thank you, Sheyi. So we have a question from Akano that says, so she's also starting a new role by May. Basically, she's saying, how do I manage delivering within timelines during the first 90 days? So Chinonso, this is for you.
Once again, congratulations. Delivering within timelines. I think we've said a lot of things. This 1 hour 30 minutes. I think you should go back and listen to the entire session again. There's nothing special. As I said, it's make sure you set clear expectations. We have this working backwards thing in Amazon where if they tell you that on day 90 you need to have XYZ, you need to say, okay, that means at day 60 I need to have ABC. That means at day 30 I need to have 1, 2, 3. So whatever you think is going to be success, which is what you agree with your manager, as someone said, the manager's manager, in the next 90 days, work backwards from there so that it's not on the 89 you realize that you're not on track. There is always big milestones, but break that big 90-day milestone into deliverable items where at the end of week 1 or even day 1, you know that I've ticked the box and I have 89 more boxes to tick, versus having that one big splash of I need to do this one thing and trying without clear actionable steps to get there. And then everything we said so far today if you implement every single thing everyone said today, I think you'll be fine. And don't have one big day 90 footstep. Just break that into smaller bits that you can check across you as you go along towards day 90.
Thank you, Chinonso. So we have a question from Miriam that says, so for Shay, what would you do differently if you were a student with 3 years of experience in product management trying to break into the UK tech market?
Interesting question. To be honest, I feel like it's the same things that we've said already. So breaking into the UK tech market, first thing is, are you visible in that tech market? So are there specific, a lot of us are very scared to be very picky about what we want or where we want to go. So UK tech market, but where in particular? Is it an industry, or do you have top 2 or top 3? And I think being very specific helps. Again, prioritization, right? If we have a strategy to just hit everywhere, we're burning energy. But I really think applying product principles to yourself is probably one of the best things you can do. So try and actually make choices, experiment, right? As you're trying to do those things, you'll find what's working and what isn't. UK tech market, I can think of some groups that you probably need to be in. There's Women in Tech, for example, which is they're on WhatsApp, they're on LinkedIn, they're all over the place. Are you going to physical events? Now, I'm not saying that going to all these things by themselves will mean that you get a role, but it's being intentional about, okay, I want to work in Amazon, and so I am going to be focused on finding people who work in Amazon within my network. Could be your alumni, could be people in church, could be, anybody that you already know. I think being very intentional helps. Even your helpers help you. I always say to everyone that there's so much going on in the world. Everybody is dealing with something, whether you see it or not, whether you understand it. There's like 100 or 50 million things going. So if you come to someone and say to someone, okay, I'm looking for a job, help that person be specific about what you need, because that would help them immediately go, actually, you know what, I can't help you, but I know somebody who I can introduce you to. So what I would say is just be as specific as you can and prioritize where you put your energy. It's very important because it's a crowded market. So you really want to be specific, experiment. There will be things that work, things that don't work. But I think as you try these things, you start to figure out where the pattern is. I know this is not like a light bulb answer, but I really, really believe that with people can create roles for you. Like you had Chinonso, I've seen it happen. We're not saying things that don't happen. I've seen organizations where people have literally said, I don't want to lose this person, or people, you've come into an organization and you choose a mentor, or you find a mentor and you're very explicit. Somebody said that on this call again about being very, very outward with what you want. So don't keep it within you. Let everybody know that you are looking for a PM role. Let it be like a rubber stamp that, see, I'm the one. PM opportunity me, because that's what happens. Because when I'm walking around and somebody says, oh, I'm looking for somebody who wants to transition to PM, are you in my top 3 in my brain? Or because I don't know when that opportunity is going to come. So I think those are the principles to really apply, and hopefully that would help.
Thank you so much, Shay. So we are out of time. Before I hand over to Joy, I just want to say thank you so much to both of you for being on this call, for sharing your insights. I'm sure all of us on this call have learned a lot, and we'll be taking away some things that maybe we didn't know before or we hadn't thought very deeply about before. So